Hello again. This is Arlene Grant-Holcomb, and I'm returning to finish out the questions related to your personal statement for dietetic internship application. Those last questions are what are your strengths and weaknesses or areas needing improvement? And what other information do you consider important for the selection decision? I'll have one more short video after this with just some closing thoughts and tips. So what are your strengths and weaknesses or areas needing improvement? If you're not sure, I've taken a screenshot of the page of ratings that are sent to your recommenders. And so this should give you a good idea of the qualities that dietetic internship directors have agreed are important, and they want your supervisors, your instructors to comment on these qualities if they've actually observed them. So this is also a good place to start to look for things that might be strengths or weaknesses. Hopefully, you'll see something on this list that you'll be able to identify as one of your strengths. And the important thing is that you don't just say, I react very well to stress. You actually give an example and you illustrate how you react to stress or whatever the other quality is that you feel strongly about. Now, later in this presentation or the next one, I'm going to say this is not the time to be modest. But if you do feel uncomfortable pointing out a strength, one way you could say it is something like what I wrote here. I was really surprised and happy when my work supervisor said in my evaluation how much she appreciated my reliability and responsibility. As I thought about it, I have been setting my alarm earlier so that I have plenty of time to get ready and get to work a few minutes early. So that's one way to say it. You could actually take someone else's words, if they've indeed told you that, and present it in that way. It all depends on your own comfort level and style. Some other strengths that I've heard from program directors and from students once they've become interns are these that I've listed, and there are probably more. I would say the number one strength would be integrity. If someone has pointed that out to you, I think that's worth mentioning. Attention to detail is another critically important strength. In fact, this entire application process is a test of your attention to detail. Program directors find it to be very important. Professionalism and or respect, also extremely valuable strengths. Having a sense of humor is important. And if someone has told you that, or you think you do, I think that's worth mentioning. Flexibility, on the checklist, it has adaptability. You can look up in a dictionary, the definition is fairly close, but you may feel more comfortable using the word flexible than adaptable. Program directors love a flexible intern. Optimism, being a team player, being coachable, willing to receive instruction and correction is extremely important. And that may tie in if you have a history in athletics, as I mentioned in a different video. Generosity. That doesn't necessarily mean giving things away, but it means sort of sharing what you know, sharing your abilities, giving credit to people who deserve credit. And then an ability to face and overcome failure or adversity. That ties in with perseverance, but you may look at it a little bit differently when I put it that way, thinking about what things have you faced that have brought difficulty to your journey, and how have you successfully overcome those things. That can be a strength as well. So what about the straight A student? I took a screenshot here of a grade report from a student from a number of years back. I tried to think back to students that I knew that were mostly straight A students. And what's in the image is not important. What's important is that Yes, academics are extremely important, but with a student that has really exceptional GPAs, probably 3.8, 3.9 or above, it's really important for those applicants to also demonstrate that they can communicate, solve problems, and work outside of the box. They're not just good at taking exams and being a strong academic performer, though that is extremely important. Again, if you have a near perfect GPA, you don't need to point that out as a strength. That will be crystal clear to the program directors from your transcripts and from the courses that you've entered into DICAS. Transcripts, again, will reveal that perfectly. Focus on one of the other strengths with an example. They'll know right away that you're also very strong academically. Now, what about weaknesses? Again, it could be in any of the previously listed strengths that were on that evaluation grid that I shared with you. The few that I've listed below are important not to claim as a weakness. These, I think, would be considered a red flag to program directors. So I would not say that your weaknesses are integrity or attention to detail or professionalism, teamwork, ability to overcome failure, punctuality, or communication. Those are really top level important qualities and characteristics. And if you do have a weakness in any one of these areas, work on it and get it resolved before you get to your internship so that it never shows up as a weakness, and find something else that could be a weakness in your experience or in your profile. Again, if you're not really sure that you even have a weakness or you're not sure what they are, start asking people. Ask people that are close to you, your roommates, your siblings, your parents, a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Ask them, tell them this is really important. I don't see it, but I know you know what my weaknesses are. Help me to find something that I can actually work on. Again, for yourself, think if there are things that you have maybe made a resolution about at the beginning of the year to do better. Real weaknesses that students have effectively written about with real solutions are some of the things that I've listed here. Being impatient, being reluctant to delegate. It's better to say that you're reluctant to delegate than to say you're a controlling perfectionist. And in truth, sometimes those are the same things. It's okay to say that spelling is a weakness. Your generation has grown up using keyboarding, and we rely on spell checkers, and it's possible to miss things that way if you don't check carefully. So it's perfectly okay to list that's something that's been pointed out to you by your instructors or your family. Having little or no work or volunteer experience is also a recognized weakness. There are some students that I've known whose parents have more or less insisted that they focus on college while in college and have discouraged them from working, and so they have very little paid work experience. And then have known others who are fully self-supporting and have fully paid their way through college and really haven't had time to volunteer. And so identifying those as weaknesses, and again, a realistic way to approach how to mitigate that, is a good, very realistic weakness to identify. Also, students occasionally in our discipline, we have a lot of science courses that are required, get their lowest grades in their general chemistry or their biochemistry or anatomy and physiology. I tell my students from Cal Poly that if they have any grade lower than a C, they should plan to retake those classes, either as they're applying or before they finalize their application. So it's not a good idea to just settle on that. But if you earned a D in a class and then you retook it and got a C, it's perfectly okay to acknowledge the difficulty that you have with a particular science class, or really any class, and then what you've done to resolve it. And retaking a class shows how you deal with difficulty, how you deal with failure, and program directors actually value and appreciate that. Fear of public speaking is a quite common fear. Being reluctant to address conflict. And then probably one of the most sensitive, and yet it occurs not very often, is the idea that you have a felony on your record, or even a misdemeanor. Those are things that should, the first time a program director hears about a felony or a misdemeanor that you might have, should not be in your personal statement. It's something that you should be emailing them about to find out how you approach applying to their program, because there are some programs, the nature of the rotation sites will not accept anyone with a felony on their record. And so it's something you would want to work towards seeing if you could get that forgiven. I'm not sure of the exact term, but get that expunged from your record. But it's something to talk to program directors about early on so that there's no surprise. And then clearly, if you had this as a weakness and yet you've resolved it, you've not committed any further infractions, it's something worth talking about. It's an important part of your professional development and your personal journey. So when you are ready to sort of settle on a weakness or an area of improvement, choose something that you're actually working on. So I picked this picture of Vernal Falls. Some of you may or may not be familiar with Yosemite National Park. It's a beautiful national park here in California, one of my favorite places to visit and to hike. And just below Vernal Falls, there's a bridge. And so I thought about this because I was thinking about weaknesses like water under the bridge. What we hope, and what program directors hope, is that you have recognized a weakness or an area for improvement, and then you've applied some skills and you're on the path to either resolve it completely or improve it significantly. So I gave a couple of examples here. Did you retake a science class, change your study strategy, or cut back on work volunteer hours to allow more study time? And maybe you use a planner now to visualize your schedule so that you can avoid overcommitments. Possible strategy you could write about. Are you using a dictionary to check spelling instead of relying on spell checker? Are you consciously seeking parts of group projects to delegate so that you can practice letting go? Try to identify both the weakness and how you're working to resolve or improve it. So continue to reflect on those things. Don't worry about the word count. Keep brainstorming, keep outlining. This is basically the same slide I had in the other presentations. Just get started. I'll come back with that last question in the next one. This one went a little longer than I had planned. So we'll go with this. I'll cover the last question and then a few other tips for a strong personal statement. Thanks.